Welcome to SI Now. I'm Robin Lundberg here with Ryan Aselta.
Lots to talk about in the NBA, Robin, as the NBA is going to open up its post-All-Star break schedule on Thursday, which gives us, of course, a chance to look ahead. And when it comes to the future of the NBA, the biggest question, Robin, hanging over the association, of course, is where is LeBron James going to play next season? Well, this morning, ESPN released the results of a player poll on this topic after polling 48 NBA players. Some interesting results. We're going to highlight a couple of questions here. The first one was, where will LeBron sign this season? Interesting. 59% say they think LeBron will play next season in Cleveland, that he'll remain there. The other question that was followed up, which is kind of an interesting take on this, where should LeBron play next season? Cavaliers won out that one as well. Even overwhelmingly, 66% of the players polled think that LeBron should play in Cleveland again next season. When you see these numbers, the way they break down there, the Lakers seem to be second on both lists. The Heat, surprisingly, getting some love there. Does it change your perception of where you think he will or should play next season?
No, it doesn't change it at all. The NBA trade deadline did that. That's what changed it for me. Because before the trade deadline, I was sure LeBron was out of there. You know, I had said San Antonio made some sense, so they would have had to make some moves to accommodate him. And here's the issue. It's twofold. One, the Cavs got much better. I don't think people realize how good they're going to be the remainder of the season. They got much younger as well. The only drawback on their side is they are so LeBron reliant. The question he may ask himself going forward is, can I keep doing this the way I have done it my whole career? But status quo, it's a really good fit for him. Then the other problem for him is there isn't a perfect fit somewhere else. There isn't like the team that has all the pieces and all the cap space. Houston would have to do some maneuvering. I mentioned San Antonio, same thing. The only team that can sort of just bring him in is the Lakers, and they're not any good. So the real problem there is there's not a perfect fit, and the Cavs got better, so I would install them as the favorites as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on the trade deadline take. Absolutely, that played a role here. This just confirmed what I've been feeling and saying all along, that he needs to stay in Cleveland. He will stay in Cleveland. It's the right move for him. So it really just it made me think, hopefully he's going to come to his senses. And, you know, if he explores free agency or not, that Cleveland is the place to stay and keep his legacy going, because I think it sullies his legacy if he was to leave Cleveland. Some interesting takeaways outside of these two questions, though, in this poll. Which coach should LeBron play for? 46% said Greg Popovich, which I thought was very interesting. There seems to be the social issue aspect of that. Can you imagine the two of them paired together? And where should he not sign? 31% said the Sixers, 28% said the Warriors. Interesting quote here. Player in the NBA said if he went to Golden State, that would cut his competitive edge out. It would take something away from the type of player he really is. And I feel strongly about that. If he's going to leave and just jump ship and go to a team that's already set up to win, his reputation, his legacy goes out the window, and he's just chasing titles like we've seen with a lot of players before.
Well, I don't think LeBron's legacy could ever go out the window, considering what he's accomplished. But I'm with you. Golden State is the one place where it would be, to use the word you use, sullied, because it's just unfair. I mean, they already feel unfair. You put LeBron there, what are you going to do at that point? I mean, did you see LeBron and KD trapping DeRozan in the corner in the All-Star game? There's nothing you could possibly do. I love the fit of LeBron and Popovich because of the mutual respect, the fact they've gone back and forth. It would sort of be a last ride for each. And as you mentioned, you could get the, LeBron Pop or Pop LeBron 2020 ticket going from that. But another big future sports story is the NFL draft, and Baker Mayfield may be the most talked about name going into said draft. There's one thing Mayfield doesn't like people talking about, however, comparisons between he and Johnny Manziel, saying, quote, "We're two completely different people. I've always been a team-oriented guy. Not saying that Johnny wasn't, but I've quickly earned the respect of my teammates because of how I worked." Are the Mayfield-Manziel comparisons fair?
This is tough because, you know what, they're logical that they're coming up, and it's logical that Mayfield is trying to distance himself away from any comparisons to Johnny Manziel, but they both played high school football in Texas. They're both Heisman Trophy winners. Both were the man within their football program, which may have led to some of their problems. Both of them have had arrests in college. Now, obviously, Manziel had a lot more issues going on off the field with alcohol and domestic violence. So that aspect of it, I think, is unfair, the comparison there. But you would think this comparison coming up, NFL teams have already made this comparison. They are doing a thorough background check when it comes to Baker Mayfield. And right now he's doing some, damage control and saying, hey, We're not the same people. We don't think the same. And you know, he's playing, you can read that quote right there. He's kind of saddling both sides of the fence, saying he's different than Johnny Manziel. He's more of a team guy. Not that Johnny wasn't a team guy. So I think it's a little bit unfair, actually, when you look at Mayfield and having to answer these type of questions.
Look, it's easy to eliminate these comparisons. Just don't get in trouble. I mean, because that's really where the problematic aspect of it comes in. We know Manziel was a flop in the NFL, but a lot of that was due to his off-the-field problems, too. We never really saw if his talent would have translated. There's the natural comparisons because of size, because of, you know, being the man at the college. But it was the off-the-field incident that really put Mayfield into the comparison with Manziel. And look, Manziel, in college, we didn't know about the extent of his problems. It was more a discussion of, hey, is he partying too much? Does he have to mature? We later found out he had legitimate off-the-field issues, and that's what Mayfield has to avoid. And if he does that and is relatively successful in his rookie year, then all this stuff will go away.
Yeah, you remember Manziel was arrested as a freshman at Texas A&M. Mayfield stuff, though, it seems his transgressions, the putting the flag in the middle of the field against Ohio State, the crotch grab against Kansas.
It's not that stuff that bothers me. It's the disorderly conduct and arrests and all that
public intoxication. It all kind of ties into being a 22-year-old college
That's
kid
stuff that goes away and you forgive if
Right.
it doesn't happen over and over again. That was the problem with Manziel.
Yeah, and you hope that Mayfield knows that he can't get away with that stuff as a professional. All right, Robin, speaking of quarterbacks, a report out of New York says the Jets are prepared to pay whatever it takes to land quarterback Kirk Cousins. Now, assuming that the Redskins don't franchise Cousins, is this the smart play for the Jets?
I have to think about it and pause for a second because the Jets have been looking for their quarterback since man landed on the moon, right? I mean, it's been a real search for them. And Kirk Cousins doesn't feel like the final answer there. At the same time, he's probably an upgrade. And I'm one who generally scoffs at the money stuff because every quarterback that signs the next deal, it's the next biggest deal. So I don't think this is as terrible a move as you automatically go to when you hear Jets about to, back up the Brinks truck for Kirk Cousins, though I don't think it's ultimately the answer for the Jets either. It's probably an okay short-term move.
Yeah, I like the report, whatever it's going to take. Well, it's going to take a lot. We're talking maybe $30 million a year to get him. Now, assuming, of course, the Redskins don't franchise tag him and he doesn't appeal the franchise and all that, because that'll kill any type of going to the Jets at that point. They're not going to deal with that. But listen, I think it's a great move for the New York Jets. I think they've been, like you said, they've been waiting a quarterback since they drafted Mark Sanchez. He had that quick run, but since then it's been a disaster. Here's a guy, though, statistically, who has a solid track record for not one, but two, but 3 straight years now. He's basically a top 7 quarterback. He's averaged 27 touchdowns per season. His quarterback rating is over 97 over those 3 years. You have to take the proven guy. Kirk Cousins has done enough to prove himself as a top 10 NFL quarterback, comparing him to Darnold, Rosen, Baker Mayfield. Kirk Cousins has the track record and the pedigree. Go with the proven product, and the Jets have $100 million in payroll flexibility here under the cap this season. They got the money, pay the man, and then build around him.
Back to the NBA, we're now joined by the Crossover's Ben Golliver, who comes to us courtesy of Toyota. Let's go places. Ben, we know that Adam Silver and the NBA, they haven't been hesitant to, innovate. The new All-Star seeding said it all. Now they're talking about seeding the playoffs differently, including going 1 through 16, and that they're giving it serious attention, throwing out the conferences. Are you down with this plan?
I love it. I'm glad they're talking about it because we've seen problems with the playoff format here in recent years in lots of different ways. Sometimes there's teams like the 9th seed in the West or the 10th seed in the West that would have made the playoffs if they were in the East. Sometimes we see situations where the 2 best teams in the league are on the same side of the bracket. So, that's denying the finals from being the premier matchup. Maybe the Western Conference Finals is better than the finals some years. We should just do away with all that. And what I loved about what Adam Silver said was that tradition is not going to hold them back here. They're really concerned just about the travel issues if they can kind of set up a 1 to 16 playoff format. They're not worried about carrying on the same way they've done things since 1950, where you have an East versus a West champion facing off. And when you think about it, the NBA is trying to become this global game. And I don't think the East versus West inside the United States thing is going to be so important to a huge part of their, growing international and global fan base. So why stick to tradition? Why not try something new? Ensure you get the two very best teams in that premier finals matchup, and also ensure you get two great conference finals matchups. And I think when you look back, say the last 4 or 5 years, we haven't had very many good Eastern Conference Finals matchups because the talent in that Eastern Conference hasn't been that deep. I think the NBA is leaving money on the table because of it, and I love the idea that they're pursuing a top 1-16 format.
Ben, let's talk about a team that will likely be a top seed regardless of format, and that's the Celtics. So they've lost 3 in a row, 9 of their last 15 games as well. Brad Stevens considering a lineup change post-All-Star break. This was a team that was 22-4 at one point. Has Boston peaked already this season?
Well, look, they peaked in November. I think we all knew it when it was happening, too. I mean, they had such an outstanding run. I mean, they were just really playing above their heads, weren't they? Everything was going perfectly, and you knew it was going to get trickier and more difficult, especially because of the number of young guys that they rely upon and because they don't have Gordon Hayward out there in the lineup. Now, in terms of, can they get back to that real fearsome title contention type of team that they look like in November, I think it's going to require Hayward's return. I don't think without him, they're able to match up with the new Cavaliers. We saw head-to-head what Cleveland did to Boston in Boston not too long ago. They still don't have a really good defensive matchup for LeBron James, and he's starting to turn it on here as we get closer to the playoffs. So to me, Boston's in that situation where, they could be a second round out type team. They could be a conference finalist team that goes out early in that series, sort of like they did last year, unless they get a big injection of talent from a guy like Gordon Hayward.
One of the other East teams we've been talking about is the Raptors. We keep saying, look out for the Raptors, but Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan have legitimately struggled come playoff time. Do you think this year will be different? Will Toronto be for real when it counts?
Yeah, Robin, you're probably like me trying to sell yourself on Toronto for 4 years in a row, and it's a tough sell. I mean, we've seen the track record in the postseason from these guys. Their field goal percentages goes way down. Their ball movement goes down, but they have revamped their offense. They've turned to a deeper rotation this year. Those things have really helped them become, I think, the most consistent and dominant team during the regular season in the Eastern Conference, and that's not something we totally expected given how many players that they turned over last offseason, but I mean, you saw it even in the All-Star game on Sunday. When it got to crunch time, the ball's in DeMar DeRozan's hands. He got really uncomfortable. He misses a free throw really badly. He has a terrible turnover in the last minute of the game. He just got shook. He didn't want to be in that spot. He didn't want to be the guy who decided that All-Star game when it's on the line. And not that the All-Star game is sort of like a playoff atmosphere, but those guys were all playing very hard, with 3-4 minutes left in that game. And I just don't think that they have the top-end talent necessary to keep up with a team like Cleveland. And I still think, LeBron looks at them as kind of easy pickings, just like they have been for him in previous postseasons.
I think you can take some things from the All-Star game when you see the best of the best rising to the top, and then maybe the Western Conference version of the Raptors is the Rockets with James Harden and Mike D'Antoni and some of their playoff struggles coming under scrutiny. They do have the best record in the league. Are they actually on the Warriors level? And if not, can they get there?
Well, I think the Rockets, you have to give them credit for this. They've been playing in sixth gear all season long because they're a new team. They're figuring it out. They were working Chris Paul in after the injury. So their attention to detail and just night-to-night effort has been exceptional. So the Rockets in sixth gear, to me, are as good as the Warriors in fourth gear. And that's the real X factor here, is that Golden State just has not been killing themselves on a nightly basis. Every once in a while, they'll bring out their true game, but they're not racing through or sprinting through this season quite like Houston is. So I think if we're analyzing a postseason matchup, I think Golden State still clearly has the advantage. They have the continuity factor, which is obviously huge in the postseason. They've got greater length, and a guy like Kevin Durant is a very, very tough matchup for anybody, but especially for the Houston Rockets. And then the Golden State Warriors defense has had great success against James Harden in postseasons past, forcing him into turnovers and tough shots, low percentage shooting nights. And so for all those reasons, I'd still take Golden State over Houston. But to me, these are the two best teams in the entire league. And going back to that 1-16, playoff bracket format idea, I would love to see a Houston Golden State finals if it were to come to that.
Ooh, that would be fun, Ben. Let's stay out west. OKC and Minnesota, both teams with some star power that have been good but not great this season. Timberwolves and Thunder are battling atop the Northwest Division. Which team could be more dangerous come playoff time?
I don't really trust either one of these teams against the elite competition, but like if they were to face off in like a first round matchup, I'd still take the Thunder. The loss of Andre Robertson was a tough blow for them because it really turned Oklahoma City into a much less consistent team. I mean, their highs are very high, but now their lows are even lower. But when you look at Paul George's track record in the postseason, Russell Westbrook's ability to make multiple deep postseason runs when he had Kevin Durant alongside him, Carmelo Anthony to me maybe not quite as important to their playoff ceiling, but they've got a nice core of proven guys. And in Minnesota, they're still in this mold of they don't have any playoff experience outside of Jimmy Butler, really. Jeff Teague, if you want to count that. Their young guys are going to have, wide eyes. I think Karl Towns and Andrew Wiggins, there's going to be an adjustment there once they reach the postseason. So if I had to, bet on it, gun to my head, who wins that series? To me, it's Oklahoma City getting past Minnesota.
Ben, what about the MVP this year? James Harden has been the front runner, but I think LeBron can get back into the race now when people look back and see he carried a bad team early in the season and now he's rejuvenated. Can he still win the MVP, or is it Harden?
Yeah. It's hilarious. You could count LeBron out twice, right? I mean, go all the way back to October. It seems like he was out of it from the jump because they played so poorly to start the season. Then you want to count him out before the trade deadline because he has a really tough month where he doesn't even really look engaged or very happy to be out there on the court with his teammate at times. But all it takes is one sensational all-star game performance here and a couple of really nice games before the break with his new teammates, and you can talk yourself right back into LeBron. But, having said that, James Harden is still the leader here. He should be considered the consensus favorite to win this award based on his consistency, Houston's record, Houston's offensive efficiency. Everything that he's doing there is translating to team success. He's done an excellent job of carrying the Rockets through Chris Paul's injury and then also coexisting with Chris Paul when they're on the court together. They're headed for a franchise record in victories. If they finish with the 1 or 2 seed as we expect in the Western Conference, to me, this should be James Harden's award.
All right, Ben, we've talked about the good. Let's talk about the bad and the ugly here. 7 teams currently sit 20 or more games under 500. As we come out of the break, who do you think will be tanking the hardest down the stretch here?
All of them. I mean, they're all going for it. It's going to be a tank fest like we've never seen before. They're changing the lottery rules in terms of how the odds work next year. So everyone's trying to get in on the best picks and their high chances to get those picks this season. So it's going to get really, really ugly. There's no doubt. The team I think should be tanking the hardest is the New York Knicks, and congratulations to them. I believe they've lost 8 straight games. I think they should keep that going for the entire rest of the season. If I were them, I would not lose again because they did start a little bit better than some of these teams like Orlando and Atlanta. So they've got some ground to make up. And now that you've lost Kristaps Porzingis, for the season, I mean, what else do you have to play for? I mean, just run this thing straight into the ground, hope for a really high pick, and you get another player who you can start to build your core around because they need a lot of talent. I mean, that's the thing with New York, and we saw that this season. Even if Porzingis takes this rise up to an all-star level, or maybe in the future we could see him as an all-NBA guy, maybe next year or the year beyond, he's going to need a lot more help than he has there in New York right now. And the only way to get that, or at least the best way to get that for this team, is to go ahead and lock down a top 5 pick. So tank as hard as possible, New York. Jeff Hornacek, don't win any more games this season. Just go all the way to the wire on like a 30-game losing streak.
Yeah, Knicks got to get a move on. They're not one of those teams that are 20 under, but they're going to catch up pretty quickly, I would think, without Porzingis. No tanking from Ben Golliver this afternoon. Thanks a lot, Ben. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
It's day 12 at the Winter Olympics in PyeongChang. Here's who won, what made news, and which events you should watch. The American brother-sister duo of Maya and Alex Shibutani took the bronze medal in ice dance, while the Canadian favorites Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer narrowly beat the French to take gold. In the freestyle ski halfpipe, Britta Sigourney took the bronze, while 2014 gold medalist Maddie Bowman fell on all 3 of her runs, finishing last. Michaela Schifrin pulled out of the women's downhill in order to focus on the super combined and avoid skiing on back-to-back days. Her much-anticipated battle against Lindsey Vonn will be delayed until then. The American women's hockey team has looked dominant and will play Canada in the gold medal championship match. Canada beat the U.S. 2-1 in group play. Tonight in primetime, Lindsey Vonn looks to reclaim the gold medal in the women's downhill. She won the event in 2010, but missed Sochi due to injury. In figure skating, the women's singles competition begins with the short program. Look for Brady Tennell and Mirai Nagasu to lead the American squad. And Ryan Donato and the men's hockey team look to stay hot heading into a quarterfinal matchup against the Czech Republic. Monday in PyeongChang, we witnessed perhaps the worst Olympian in history. That's not hyperbole. Elizabeth Swaney, an American competing for Hungary in the women's ski halfpipe, attempted exactly 0 tricks during her qualifying run. That's because she can't do any. She gamed the system using arcane Olympic qualification rules to quote-unquote earn her way to Korea. Ryan, is this impressive or embarrassing?
Oh, this is ultra embarrassing on both levels, Robin. It's embarrassing for this athlete to call herself an Olympian. Who's she fooling? She's going to come home. Everyone knows she's an absolute fraud, and it's embarrassing for the Olympic, the IOC, the regulations, the rules that allow these type of things to happen. She skirted the system. This is a woman who is an American. She went to Cal Berkeley, went to Harvard, but yet before this she competed for Venezuela as a skier and now for Hungary. They are skirting the system. It's embarrassing overall that athletes that are born in other countries can consistently go skirt the system, compete for other countries due to lineage in the family. This is a joke of epic proportions.
Her commitment's impressive. I mean, you know, competing since like 2013 in order to do this. What's embarrassing to me is not the skirting around the rules as far as where she's from. It's that she could actually get into the Olympics by doing this. You know, for anyone who says some of these are niche sports, their argument was bolstered because theoretically, I guess, you or I could have done this and made the Olympics. Is this something you would have done?
Absolutely not. Because like I said, you come home, what are you at a party? You're going to get introduced as the Olympian? Mm-hmm. No, everyone knows it's a joke. You're a fraud. And I choose not to live my life as a fraud.
Show us one of your tricks.
All right, no movement atop the college basketball rankings this week as the top 4 teams remain in place. SI's Dan Green joins us now. And Dan, some interesting developments in the Big 12. Kansas absolutely annihilates Oklahoma by 30 last night. Sooners, they may have the best player in the country at this point in Trae Young, but this is a team that's lost 6 straight. They're just 16-11 on the season. Could we see an NCAA tournament where Oklahoma and Trae Young are not a part of the big dance?
It's wild that it's even gotten to the point that we're asking that question. I mean, a month ago, that would have been a kind of absurd proposition. Not to be alarmist, yes, it's possible. If they don't start winning games, this is a team that right now is in kind of a free fall. They have to just simply win some games. They have built up a pretty good resume, but Trae Young's in a shooting slump from outside, and he's had to carry a big burden that takes a certain toll there. And they've really just slowed down. Now, the good thing for them is if it does get to the point where they're on the bubble, they've got so a lot of quality wins under their belt. We know the committee this year is emphasizing what it calls quadrant 1 wins, which is basically when you beat a top 30 team at home or a top 75 team on the road. And they've got 6 of those. Not a lot of teams in that conversation will be able to say that. But before things even get to that point, they just have to win games. They have a home game with Kansas State coming up that's looking almost kind of like a must-win, which is just something that would have been completely out of the conversation not too long ago.
Now, on the other side, the Jayhawks, they appear to have regained their swagger. They're up to 8th in the AP poll and led by Devontae Graham, who is our adrenaline performer presented by Toyota. Let's go places. The senior point guard dominated Monday night's matchup with freshman phenom Trae Young, putting up 23 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds, while holding Young to a season-low 11 points. Graham is averaging more than 17 points and 7 assists in Big 12 action, and he has Kansas in position for a mind-boggling 14th straight Big 12 title. Dan, how does this addition of the Jayhawks stack up to previous teams?
It's a different version of the Jayhawks than what we're used to seeing, and I think early in the year, that's what was throwing people off and trying to get a read on them. We were used to seeing Kansas with these strong post players with 1 or 2 bigs and some depth there that they could kind of play through. But what's gotten them on track is that Bill Self has just embraced what they are and adapted to that personnel. This is a 3-point shooting team now. I mean, Devontae Graham himself is a big part of this team's success. But in general, it's that, overall they're shooting more threes than we've ever seen them shoot before. Right now, they take the highest share of their field goal attempts from beyond the arc in the Big 12, which is unheard of for a Kansas team under Bill Self. They're usually towards the bottom of the league in that regard. But when you got Svi Mihalik shooting 45% from the 4 spot, it's smart to just kind of embrace what you are. And so it's hard to say where this stacks up against some of those Kansas teams because it is so different. And I think it fares much better in the recent history than people would have believed a month or two ago that things were going.
2 weeks left in the regular season, Dan. Give us 3 teams that are on the bubble watch here where the next 2 weeks are really going to determine how their season goes.
One interesting team is Baylor. Just not that long ago, they were kind of written off. They had lost 4 in a row and 8 out of 10. And now all of a sudden they've won 5 in a row. They beat Kansas, they beat Texas Tech, and they're 17-10. They're 7-7 in the Big 12, and a very good league. And they're very much firmly right back in that conversation, probably on the right side of the bubble right now. Because it's the Big 12, they have some tough games coming up. They have to go to TCU. They got West Virginia. They got Oklahoma. So these 4 games could kind of go either way for them. They obviously have the Big 12 tournament after that too. But for a team that's kind of swung in one direction and then in another, it'll be interesting to see how they finish that out. But right now they're in a good position. Another team that's interesting is Washington. No one really expected them to be on the bubble or making a tournament push before this season. If you look at the advanced metrics, the efficiency stats, they don't really measure out like a tournament team, but they're just getting it done, or they have gotten it done so far. And Mike Hopkins has done a tremendous job in his first season there. He was a longtime Syracuse assistant. He was Jim Boeheim's successor in waiting at one point. And he's brought over that 2-3 zone that everyone knows so well from Syracuse using it and succeeding with it so much over the years. And so they've gotten wins over Arizona and over Kansas and Arizona State this year. They have a winnable stretch coming up to close out the Pac-12 season. And so if they can get up, they have 18 wins now. If they can get to the 20, 21, even 22 win mark after the Pac-12 tournament, they look like they could be a tournament team. And then the last one is Notre Dame, kind of more of a wild card there, in that they're 16-12 now. They had been a top 10 team earlier in the year. Then Bonzie Colson, their All-America forward, breaks his foot in practice in early January. He had been leading them in points, rebounds, steals, and blocks. And his timetable was originally set to return in early March. He warmed up with the team last night, and he hasn't been cleared to play yet. But if they can get him back for the last couple games of ACC play and into the ACC tournament, this could all of a sudden be a team that wins a couple games and gets them onto the right side of the bubble and be someone that no one wants to see in March.
There's been so much talk to that point about how this could be the most wide open field maybe ever. To that, Middle Tennessee State ranked the first time ever. Houston, first time since 2005. How dangerous could those 2 teams be come March?
I think they're teams that I wouldn't be surprised to see win 1 or 2 games at all. Houston defends pretty well. They split their season series with Cincinnati and Wichita State. There's some talk about how good is the American, but I think when you beat those 2 teams, those are kind of the 2 unquestionable good teams in that conference. That shows that you can play with anybody come March, and defense tends to translate well there. And with Middle Tennessee, we've seen the last 2 years that as a 15 seed, they beat Michigan State. 2 years ago, last year as a 12, they beat Minnesota. I think the Big Ten can vouch that this is a program you got to watch for. But it's a different team than the last couple of years, but they are one of the best defensive rebounding teams in the country. It's a real team rebounding effort. It's not just one guy. And they have a forward, Nick King, who transferred there from Alabama, and before that was at Memphis. And so he's a high major talent that is not going to be out of his element playing against some of the big boys come March, so to speak. So Middle Tennessee, you know him from the last couple of years. I'd pay attention to him again this time.
Dan, appreciate the insight. Hard to believe. It's almost March.
It's almost here.
We're here with SI baseball writer Albert Chen. Albert, of course, the Yankees, the biggest story in MLB. And Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, you saw them taking BP in their spring training debuts. Predictable display of power. Stanton, he's eager to play alongside. Judge said, it's amazing. We've got all-stars all over the place, future all-stars, future MVPs. It's a great clubhouse and a great group of guys. I'm just here to mesh with them. So the question is, are they going to be as good, Judge and Stanton, together as we imagine them to be?
Well, I think we're imagining to be really good. I think they're going to be good. I don't know that we should necessarily pencil them both in for 50 home runs. I mean, look, Judge was terrific last year, as we all know. Incredible Rookie of the Year season. He struggled through historically bad stretches in the second half, a little bit better in September, and then just a horrible October. Let's see, has he made adjustments on those off-speed pitches that they were really attacking him with? Stanton, he's going to be terrific going to a smaller ballpark. He's going to hit a ton of home runs, but he's only hit more than 40 home runs once in his career, which was last year's MVP season. He's going to be really good. As long as he stays on the field, he's going to be terrific.
Yeah, and Judge, of course, had that injury we didn't know about till a couple of weeks ago. We'll see if he's healthy now. The Red Sox, hey, they're trying to keep pace in the arms race here. They reportedly signed J.D. Martinez, 5 years, $110 million. When you look at the bat that the Red Sox have added now, Albert, is it enough? Or can they compete with the Yankees atop the AL East?
Well, perfect signing for the Red Sox. And, you know, we talked about Stanton only hit more than 40 home runs once in his career. Martinez has averaged 40 home runs since 2014, a real reliable source of power. The thing about the Red Sox is, you know, we imagine them as this, you know, high-scoring, high-powered offense. They were dead last in the American League in home runs last year. Martinez is exactly what they need in that lineup. This was the move, counter move that they really needed to make to keep up with the Yankees. They're right there. That's going to be an incredible race.
A lot of teams with pressure to win this year. Which of these teams do you think has the most pressure, expected contenders? The Dodgers, the Nationals, or the Indians?
Well, the Dodgers always have pressure on them because they're the Dodgers and with that massive payroll. The Indians, for sure, with the drought, the playoff drought everyone knows about, and their struggles in the postseason and that, you know, nightmare 2 years ago coming some close. But you got to say it's the Nationals. And I think it's all about Bryce Harper there, that window to win. You know, they got Harper, but also Murphy, Daniel Murphy, and also Gio Gonzalez are going to be free agents after the season. Strasburg and Scherzer, they're not getting any younger. So the Nationals, a lot of pressure, especially with all their postseason failures in October's past. They need to win this year.
Let's stay with the Nationals and Bryce Harper, who is going to be a free agent after this coming season. He said that he's not going to let it distract him, the pending free agency. But no doubt, Albert, this is going to be a story all season long. You mentioned the window starting to shrink for this team to win a World Series. Is there a point that the Nats have to consider moving Bryce Harper before he leaves as a free agent?
That would be an overreaction, I think, at this point, for sure. I mean, you got to look at all your options when you're a baseball team in this day and age. And look, I mean, if you're, for whatever reason, it's a nightmare first half, a lot of injuries, and you're in, you know, not even in playoff hunt, I think the Nationals, you know, you have to look at your options because the haul is going to be historic if you do trade away Bryce Harper at that point. But, you know, I don't see it happening. They still have a young core with Anthony Rendon, Trey Turner. There are pieces here where it's not all doom and gloom if they don't win this year. So I think there's a lot going on. You know, there's going to be maybe some talk about, oh, what can the Nationals get? But I think that would be a clear overreaction if they even think about trading Bryce Harper.
One quick follow-up. Yeah. Could he fit in with the Yankees? I mean, every big-time, big-money free agent the Yankees are linked to. Could there be a third outfield spot for Bryce Harper?
Well, I think the assumption is they sign Stanton. You know, that probably takes him out of the running for Harper. But look, it's the Yankees. They're in the running for everybody.
I mean, you got that kind of bankroll. It happens. Appreciate the time, Albert. That'll do it for us here today on SI Now. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. In the meantime, you can check out all the latest updates and videos at SI Now Live on Twitter.